Frack, we do talk back. Thank you for joining me in this episode. My name's Patrick, and I'm Frack. Frickety Frack, we do talk back is a show where I discuss different aspects of fandom and how they relate to the gospel. We'll be going through an episode of My Hero Academia and conducting the teachings from the Bible. The name of the show comes from my dad, who dubbed my brother and me Frick and Frack since we were kids. So we're covering episode 149 of My Hero Academia, entitled Light Fades to Rain. So in this episode, the big crux of this episode is the continued fight against Shigaraki on two different fronts. One is Bakugo, then the other is the big three showing up. This is another great combat episode. So if you have been itching for more great fights in My Hero Academia, this is an episode for you. I can't recommend it enough for watching this action going on, and especially we get to see the big three in action and working together. That's the other cool thing about it, because we saw in the Lemillion story arc where they're going against, uh, you know, Overhaul and his crew. Each of the big three fought individually mostly, and so there wasn't a whole lot of teamwork being done between them. But then we get to see how the three of them work well together. Sun Eater does some great work with his becoming whatever he eats quirk, and does amazing things, like, and especially with animal things. And he sneaks up on Shigaraki and camouflage. Uh, you know, Lemillion, he's like this big sneaky MVP of this episode, because since he has his permutation uh, quirk, he can't necessarily be hurt by Shigaraki, as long as he's not too distracted or anything like that. And so he comes and goes, and he's doing all this really great work. And so it's just further explains why Aizawa, when we first learn about Lemillion, was that he said he's probably going, like, once he becomes a pro hero, he'll be the closest to becoming the new number one. And then Nejri, she was the glue for the other two. Now, she wasn't. No, she's very powerful, but she's not as fast, and she's not as multifaceted per se as Sun Eater is, and definitely not as fast as Lemillion. But her power was able to enhance the other two to make them more powerful. For example, one of my favorite moments in all of this is that Nejri does a big blast and uses it to hook around Lemillion's hand, so he can do a super punch on Shigaraki, because Lemillion only has normal human strength. Now, he's a really buff dude, so I'm sure any normal person getting punched by him, it's gonna hurt. And we have to remember that back in when he regained his quirk against the war against the Liberation Army, I mean, he took on Nomu and was doing pretty good. So that's just shows how good he is. And so, but he was able to be enhanced to actually think to do something against Shigaraki because of Nejiri. And then, then the best part about all this is we get to see Sun Eater's like ultimate move, and the him and Nejiri working together, and Lemillion supporting them, distracting them so that he can get that set up. Uh, that giant, awesome animal cannon is the best way to describe it. Was just amazing to see animated. I had read this way back in the day when it appeared in the manga, and so seeing it now, it's just incredible to see. And so uh, Shigaraki, still doesn't have any of his quirks, but he's still on par with Golden Age All Might physically. It's not a quirk, it's just the way his body is. So then you take that strength, and then you have his like finger growth things, And like I said, Sun Eater was able to do this awesome sneak attack, and it was attempting to poison Shigaraki because he doesn't have regeneration, but his body is adapting to all the quirks that he has, and so that and created having a mouth that spit out the poison. And so even though Sun Eater was able to get this monster blast on Shigaraki, he was able to handle all of this. Like, it's just crazy how powerful Shigaraki is without any of his quirks. And so that's just, amazing. And then the other part of this episode is Bakugo's growth. We get this really touching moment where he kind of goes into his own memories and kind of has this little moment with the spirit of All Might where he's like, I've been too afraid to ask you this whole entire time because I'm just too proud. In my these are in my own words. So I've never been able to ask you for your autograph. And which, even among all those things, Midoriya was still had it put together enough to ask for All Might's uh, autograph. And so Bakugo in this moment, he's growing. His power is growing. And he hits Shigaraki with his most powerful attack, and it doesn't work. But then one of the interesting things, one of the things I love about the My Hero Academia world is that they do have a tendency to explain some things about quirks. We come to find out that his ultimate attack had some side effects, and that was able to increase Bakugo's speed. So he starts zipping around the battlefield faster than the eye can see, which is amazing. And he's able to control himself well enough that he actually gets some decent blasts on Shigaraki. Now he doesn't take him down for the count, but Shigaraki is able to adapt to Bakugo's new speed. And unfortunately, at the end of this episode, I'm going to warn you guys, if you have not watched this episode yet, or if you've not read the manga, it Shigaraki pierces Bakugo's heart. Now that's where the episode ends. We don't necessarily, if you want to know, you got to watch the next episode. Next episode is already out. I'm a little, at the time of this recording, I am way behind on the current My Hero Academia episodes and reviews. So I'm not going to spoil anything if you have not seen it yet. If you're like me and have a lot of stuff to watch and a lot of stuff to do. Uh, so it's just amazing to see this, the teamwork, the big three working so well together. It was just really amazing to see. And so I want to go to the biblical theme, which is First Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11. This is what it says. Therefore encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. So this is a verse from Paul, being sent out to the church of Thessalonica. And I chose this verse because of the talk of friendship that happens in this episode. Now, it first starts with Mirio having a conversation with Shigaraki. And, Mirio basically says to Shigaraki, it was like, if you had friends, you wouldn't want to destroy everything. Uh, and this sets Shigaraki off. He does not take this well. This is the first time we see a real splinter in Shigaraki's personality in this story arc. Now, obviously, we've seen his personality split and different issues happen in other events, but this was the first time here that he had a moment. And then the other reason why I chose this episode is because we get some Nejri flashbacks on how she was always super excited to learn about people's quirks and how they would use them to be heroes and all these great things. And so, because she was deemed as annoying and frustrating, she did not have a lot of friends until Sun Eater approaches her, but he approaches her because of the encouragement that he received from Mirio. And so the three of them became fast friends, and that friendship made them stronger and work together better. And this is a part of how they developed into becoming the big three of UA. And she mentions that, my friendship with these two guys made me stronger. And then, on top of it, Sun Eater, he has the same dialogue, similar mindset where he is thinking of Mirio's pep talks and encouragement, and the best way to describe Mirio is unwavering support of Sun Eater. And so, in this episode, Shigaraki, he's reminded of his solitude and loneliness by Lemillion's actions. And so, yeah, the opposite of end of this is that the friendship of the big three gives them hope and encouragement. And so Shigaraki is isolated and lonely, and because of that, that kept him from truly experiencing good life and encouragement. So in this world today, it can be very easy to tear one another down, and it can be very frustrating. There's a rule that on the internet that uh, usually says don't read the comments, because at a certain point, name calling will occur, and it's just downright mean and nasty at some point. Even if it's like, hey, you know what? I really love cookies. Then all of a sudden, 20 posts down in the comment section, there's someone saying, is like, well, if you like cookies, then you're an awful person. I'm using this as an exaggeration. If you like cookies, you like cookies. That's fine with me. I like cookies too. And so we do this where we tear each other down, we judge one another. I think of all the times on Facebook where and I shouldn't be doing it, but I read the comment section because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I'm just like, why was this said? This doesn't make anything better. And I've really started uh, taking the time to really think about, if I make a comment on a post, and say it's like a sports one, like saying something about, you know, so and so is overrated. Kevin Durant, for example. If Kevin Durant's overrated, uh, I could post on there say, I was like, oh yeah, he's totally overrated because he's injury prone. He's only good if he's on a good team that was already established before him. You can't build a team around him. I could say those kind of things. I've observed it in his playing and the way he moves around in teams. But if I say that on the internet, what good is that going to do? And so that's not, and I was like, now granted, I'm sure Kevin Durant does not read my posts or my comments, but other people do. And in my profile on the internet, I list myself as a pastor. I list myself as a Christian. When I say those kind of things, am I helping in those comments? Is it being helpful? Is it being kind? Is it being informative? Any of those things. And usually that's not the case. So I want us to look at the friendship of the big three. They never tore each other down. They encouraged one another, and they're always rooting for each other. Now remember, even within our own discipleship, we have the disciples who were arguing over who would be considered the greatest among them. They did it in Jesus' presence. And Jesus had to tell them about what being the greatest among the disciples truly means. And so the big three didn't do that. They encouraged one another. They realized their potential as a trio, but also on what they were supposed to do as heroes. And so I want us to focus on encouragement and growth in our friendships, and not worry so much about tearing each other down. I think we should do that. And I'm sure that this message on the internet is the most important message that you could hear today. So I want to encourage you. You are loved, you are cared for, and you have value. Amen. All right, so how am I going to rate this episode? Uh, this is a great follow up to the combat from the previous episode, and there's great character moments in this episode as well. We get to know more about Bakugo. We get to know more about Nejiri. We get to see the big three work together in tandem, and it's amazing. Uh, Bakugo is, a force to be reckoned with. Shigaraki even says is like, he's an extra. He's not even worth my time. But why am I nervous? I mean, that is just awesome. And here's the other really cool part. Shigaraki says, like, he doesn't even have one for all. Why is he, giving me this much trouble? This just bodes well for the future of Bakugo as a pro hero. Like, once he's grown and he has years of experience of being a pro hero, I mean, just how good he could be. That's it, obviously, if he survives. Like I said, no spoilers. And so, for me, this episode, the made up ranking that I had for the last episode, I am going to follow through with it. And this is a plus ultra 5 as well. That is perfect. It is amazing. One of the best episodes in My Hero Academia. It really cannot get any better than this, except for I'm sure the next episode will raise the stakes. All right, so anyone with questions for me about the biblical lessons that I talked about in this episode, or any other discussion ranging from anime, comics, or just anything in general, feel free to email me at frickityfracktalkback@gmail.com, or reach out to me on Twitter at frickityf, or at frickityfrack on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. So please rate, review, and subscribe. Remember that I love you. Most importantly, God loves you. And go beyond plus ultra.